You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks and a very special episode celebrating the 24th anniversary of the release of the very first officially recognised podcast that was Jedi Talk. Came out on the 7th of February 1999. I'm Mark Newbold, and joining me is my co-host. Well, introduce yourself, Mark, because I haven't done this for ages. I was going to think of something witty and pithy, but it just didn't drop.
Okay, and hello, my name's Mark, and I am the co-host of Making Tracks, and I can assure you for a fact that I was not on that first Jedi podcast. I don't know if Newbold could say the same, because he's been on just about everything.
I never was on that podcast. I do know that in the 80s I was doing fan audio, but never did anything in the 90s. Not in that style, not in those terms.
Right, sure.
It wasn't until the mid-2000s that I started podcasting. Whenever podcast became a word.
Can you remember what the first Star Wars podcast you listened to?
I mean, it was so the Wild Wild West. But the first one I can really remember, and I may be remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the ForceNet had a podcast before the Forcecast.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I do have vague recollections of that, and I do know that Jimmy and Jason, who obviously went on to do Rubber Force Radio, was Pete was the co-host.
Pete was the guy before, yeah.
God, you're talking nearly 20 years ago now when you think about it. It's sort of, well, it's 2005, 2006, maybe even earlier than that. So there was always these sort of bits floating around that I would listen to here and there. I was still doing Lightsaber then, so, you know, the focus was a bit different. It was like fanfic and a little bit of news and lots of interviews. That was the focus then. I mean, me and Louis, who I ran Lightsaber with, we would literally just sit down with anything we could record on. So it would be a dictaphone one week. It would be he'd have some fancy, neat, cool setup the next week. It was all over the place. So the sound quality was
I bet it was absolutely,
not a concern.
Bam for Poodoo,
man.
yeah.
It was all over the shop. It was hilarious. Sometimes we'd have a topic to talk about, and other times we would literally just sit there with a 4-pack of beer and just go, right, what are we going to talk about?
Bit like tonight.
Bit like today, yeah.
Okay, so I'm really curious now. What the hell were you doing then in the 80s in terms of like audio recording and stuff? What were you recording? Was that Star Wars news, or was it just bits and bobs? And
basically, me and my best pal John Hicks, who is our roleplay editor to this day.
That's cool, yeah.
Would make up our own stuff, basically. So I used to write, as I say, a lot of fan fiction. And we became pals in 84 and started recording and making up our own stories pretty quickly off the back of that. Initially, it was all just silly, you know, inspired by the Young Ones and Monty Python, just silly comedy stuff that we could. I've still got them all. They're in the next room. We could never play them because they are so incredibly un-PC that my high standing in society would be completely destroyed. So they will never see the light of day or hit human ears ever again. But we started doing Star Wars stuff and we got quite into it. I mean, we were NHP, Newbold Hicks Productions. So that was us. So we did cine films, we did comics, we did all these audio things.
Yeah.
There were loads of like different lines and storylines going on. But the Star Wars stuff, we did 17, between 85 and 88, we did 17 audio dramas. We had so much stuff, it was insane. And the sad thing was John moved in 89 and lost the box of Star Wars cassettes.
Oh, no.
And I found out after... Nathan P. Buckley, who did the Star Wars Timeline Gold and all that stuff, he did a site called Fanworks, might be Star Wars Fanworks. It was an archive of fan audio. I don't think the site's going there, but there was a page, basically for me, which had all the setting radio, which was the stuff I did on Lightsaber, but it actually listed all the fan audio we'd done in the 80s, but didn't exist. And he did tell me that our fan audio would have predated the official fan audio by 10, 15 years. If it still existed, which is heartbreaking because it's gone. I've still got all the comedy stuff, but all the Star Wars stuff has gone. So so I can't claim that.
That's sad times for friends. Yeah. The first bit of Star Wars audio that I did was at college, because I was doing a media production broadcast degree. And I think for my first year, we had to do a 15-minute audio drama. And literally, I just pulled it straight out of Dark Force Rising. I did the, I think it was Dark Force Rising. He says now it's Dark Force Rising, but it might have been Last Command. It was the assault on the Bilbringi shipyard, I believe, with Talon Card and that. Because basically, it needed to have like a cast of so many people, and there was like about 5 or 6 or 7 different people that was in that kind of scene. And it also, even though it was like, I think midway or near the end of the book, it felt like a clean start that I could almost kind of use exposition to kind of explain how we got there. And it kind of felt self-contained with that. I didn't need to reference what was going on with Han, Luke and Leia and all that stuff, so that worked pretty well. Now, thank goodness for LucasArts, you could just go and nick the audio, you'd record.
Yeah, I've got all the audio from Episode 1 Race. If you had it on PC, you could go into the files and strip out all the audio.
Yeah, you'd kind of like, you'd pull your capital ships in and, you'd fight a Star Destroyer map. I worked out that I could tell the narrative of what was going on in my audio drama by recording the output of the PC through the actual sound card. So I was basically looped it back round and that, so it was perfectly clean. But what it meant was that I could get exactly what I needed almost in real time. And that was fantastic. That was really handy. But yeah, I was probably the same as you and many people listening to this. I was like the Star Wars guy at college and uni, especially working in film and TV and stuff. Like my a lot of my coursework just happened to be about Star Wars. You're talking about, editing and editing techniques and stuff like that. It's just like, it's so easy. And also, really, even then, we're talking kind of like end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, really. So there was enough books and stuff around, like, Magic and Myth being a great book to kind of like reference in terms of all the kind of things meant in the films and stuff. So, Star Wars was ripe for picking for that kind of stuff.
Hi, this is Guy Henry, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Enjoy.
I really wish I could hear some of your audio stuff. I might have to speak nicely to somebody and get me to smuggle out an audio cassette from your house or something.
On pain of death, dude. On pain of death. I know there is still a bit of Star Wars stuff. Yeah. One thing I know survived was in maybe 84, if not 84, then certainly 85, but I'm pretty sure it was 84. We did a read of the Empire Strikes Back annual, the Marvel Empire Strikes Back annual. And bearing in mind, there was 3 of us, and we were all boys, and Princess Leia is in the Empire Strikes Back.
Funny that, yeah.
So my friend Lee, who I still see 2 or 3 times a year, we go for a curry with a bunch of us who all went to preschool together. We still live in the same town. We're still friends. There's my friend Lee, who would not thank me for sharing the audio of him doing Princess Leia like this. And it was unique. I don't think that would count as Star Wars fan audio because we were just reading an annual. But I know there are little bits out there. And I do have a cassette recorder that can sort of save stuff as MP3. So I might just have to have a little play around. We re-recorded Trouble on Tantum 5, which is one of our stories, because we've got so much better at doing the audio. We'd have 3 or 4 different tape decks set up and time them so we could set them all. Like, press that one, go, 2, go, 3, go, 4, go. And John was really good at timing it. So he timed the time that he would press the button to unpause and all the audio would start at the same time. But it was all just done with cassette recorders or us in the on the microphone doing the silence like that, stuff like that. It was great fun. And just get the sound effects where you could. I only had Star Wars and Empire on vinyl because I only had Jedi and cassette. We couldn't use Jedi because I needed the decks to do the other stuff or to record or whatever. So everything was Star Wars and Empire. And they were the single discs. Well, Star Wars was a double, but Empire was a single. So you were limited to the music you could use. So every now and again we'd chuck something from the Planet Suite or something in there. And it was awesome fun. Yeah. If those ever turned up, I would be the happiest guy in the world.
I saw on Facebook Marketplace the other day, somebody was selling, they listed about 90 audio cassettes, but didn't say what was on them, if they were blank or not, for about 30 quid. But could you imagine if just like there was just a random box of audio cassettes in some charity shop with your slightly prepubescent voice on, pretending to be like Han Solo or something? It's probably better that it was the Star Wars ones and not the...
not the others.
Yeah, not the others.
Man, I would be cancelled. No doubt about it. I mean, it's funny, though. We've been doing this for a while and I've done other podcasts before and audio stuff. And thinking back, it's funny when you hear your voice for the first time. You see yourself on family videos and home videos and stuff like that. And you think, God, is that what I sound like? But I got so used to hearing my voice. Obviously, it's a bit deeper now than it was when I was 15. But, you get so used to hearing your voice because we were editing it as well.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I'm so obsessed with editing. It goes back to then when we used to do a lot of editing. It's funny how into it you get, which is why I think now we try and be as regular as we can with Making Track and all the other shows on the Fantha Network, and other people in the podcasting world are the same, aren't they? It becomes a routine, and it's not like Star Wars ever stops. There's always something to talk about.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got Mandalorian coming up in 3 weeks' time. And then a few weeks after that, we've got Celebration and all the announcements that's going to come from that. So you just think, there's going to be stuff that at least me and you can chew over for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's not including all the actual audio content we're hopefully going to pick up from Celebration.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
We're doing a podcast there that I'm really looking forward to.
This will be the third celebration there's been a Making Tracks live. And we do Making Tracks live here, there, and everywhere around the place whenever we can do it, via this one or other places like that. But finally, for you and me to do one, I think the closest we've come was when we did National Space Centre.
Yeah, but that was good fun. I mean, it was a bit of a workout because I was running around with a mic. But hey, I'm more than happy to do that again because that actually was pretty cool. I quite liked that. So that should be quite fun to do.
Never a shortage of Star Wars stuff to talk about. And it's funny now you mentioned Mandalorian, and I think back when we were doing all the fan fiction stuff that we were doing, always very conscious of steering clear of the main characters, just keeping it to our own stuff, that you'd think in best part of 40 years down the line, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, but it pretty much is, that there would be essentially a Boba Fett style TV series on the television and all the other stuff that we've got going. And that in that time, we'd have had 1, 2, and 3, and 7, 8, and 9, and a Han Solo film and a Star Wars prequel that tells you how they stole the Death Star plans. It would have blown our minds. I'm glad we didn't know that. We might not have got so deep into our own sort of fan fiction stuff.
But even when we went from the expanded universe to, the Legends expanded universe now to what we've got now, which is just canon in whatever you want to call it. Just think that if you knew then that at one point they could just kind of just reboot a whole swathe of it, you'd be like, yeah, maybe I'm not too fussed about reading about that. I mean, actually, from a critical perspective, now there are stories that come out and you're just like, well, I've kind of read that before. You have to kind of almost admit that you're maybe not as excited because you've already kind of read something similar before. Now it's the canon, so now it's the actual official approved story, so you feel like now you've got to read it. What's been quite nice is actually over the last, 5 or 6 years, there's been such a raft of new authors that I don't think back in the expanded universe days would have even had a look in, let alone been given a hardback novel to write and release and stuff. I think it's been pretty cool that it's actually opened up a lot more of the fandom to just all these other people and different voices. It can't necessarily be a bad thing. I think it's good. It's all good for the fandom and for the Star Wars storytelling in general.
Very true. When you think the ups and downs that we've had over the years, certainly in the 80s, as the trilogy finished and Ewoks and Droids finished and Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor come out, and then it really goes quiet, you could be forgiven for thinking at that point, it's pretty much done. I know we certainly thought it's probably done, and then West End came out and we all went roleplay crazy. We stopped doing the audio stuff and focused all our creative efforts on the roleplay. We essentially lived the characters that we've been doing audio stories about in roleplay for the next 6 or 7 years. And then when that finished, it wasn't that long after we stopped role-playing in the mid-90s, regularly role-playing West End games, because a lot of the guys got into gaming and moved on to other games. And I got into doing websites and focused my stuff on that. And then by the time we got to Lightsaber in 99, June of 99, that was a fan fiction site. So a lot of the guys then would start writing our stories, and that's where the creativity picked up in the 90s. Into the 2000s doing fanfic for the next few years. So it all follows on. But basically today is celebrating podcasting and celebrating the 24th anniversary.
Hi everyone, this is Misty Roses and you are listening to Fantha Tracks. I have spoken.
When we do this again, Mark, this time next year, 7th of February 2024, it will be the 25th anniversary of Star Wars podcasting. That's a bit special, isn't it?
That is very special. You know, for me personally, because obviously, without rubbing it in, you're a little bit older, an original generation Star Wars fan. But throughout, you know, my early fandom years, as it were, from the early 90s and that, there's only one other person who was a Star Wars fan, and that was my best mate, Sam. And I was the token Star Wars nerd through that time, through school, and even into college and stuff, really, you know, even after we had special editions and stuff, and we started to, you know, we just had episode 1 of that. Then suddenly to find that you could listen to other people talk about Star Wars on a weekly and sometimes even more frequently than that basis, it opened up the whole fandom for me, definitely before social media kind of kicked in. And it was quite nice because I think without some of these podcasts, I wouldn't have gone to, I don't think, Star Wars Celebration Europe in 2007. I'm pretty sure I found out about that through listening to a podcast, and that's what made me go, oh, I'm going to get some tickets. That's how that kind of like led into me joining the Rebel Legion, Emperor 501st, Emperor Mando Mercs, Emperor Saber Guild. Just through audio alone, that has dramatically changed my life, and hopefully, I'd like to say, for the better.
Well, we'd like to think it's for the better, Mark, because if you weren't doing this, you'd just be robbing betting shops and getting drunk in alleyways. We know the future for you. It was written in the stars.
On that note, shall we wrap it up for this little special kind of celebratory episode of us talking utter nonsense? Regular episodes will resume next week. So, Mr. Newbold, could you let any of our new audience members or any of our existing audience members know how they can get in touch and send us a listener's question?
I certainly can.
Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit panthertracks.com or check out the free Panther Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@panthertracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Panther Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Panther Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK, 4 PM Eastern, 1 PM Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And check out our Panther Tracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday night at 7 PM UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Coming up next on Panther Tracks Radio, it's Start Your Engines.